Because I'm so hyper focused on providing space for, particularly for Black leaders, to be able to thrive in a very fulfilling way, and for Black people, not even just leaders, just Black people at large, to thrive in the best ways possible. Care exudes from that, because from my perspective, Black life exists in an idea.
Welcome to Real Talk with Real Leaders, inspiration for radical freedom dreamers, a space where we uplift powerful voices, discover deep wisdom, and spark the courage needed to lead in today's sea of uncertainty. Together, we'll reimagine what's possible, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Tracey Samone, Queen of Clarity and Care, and your go-to strategist, facilitator, and coach, helping social impact leaders and organizations get unstuck and get things done. Today, we have a fabulous leader lined up. But first, let's anchor down the Anchor Way. The Anchor Way is a leadership framework designed to help leaders move forward with clarity, connection, cohesion, care, and courage, even in turbulent waters. Let's take a closer look. Think about leadership like a boat. To move through uncertain waters, it needs to be well-built, well-guided, and well-powered. Every boat is built from something. At the foundation of effective leadership are three essential materials. Clarity, a grounded understanding of where you're headed and why it matters. Connection, the ability to build trust, communicate honestly, and stay rooted in relationships. And cohesion, the alignment between your values, your vision, and your daily decisions. This is what effective leadership is built on. Without it, the structure is fragile, no matter how bold your vision or how skilled your team. Aboard every boat are essentials for the journey to help you set direction, carry the work, and guide your people. The first is the compass, your direction. It represents your vision, your priorities, and your sense of purpose. It helps you stay oriented even when conditions around you are shifting. Next is the cargo, the actual work you're responsible for carrying, the programs you run, the commitments you hold, the culture that you're shaping. These are the things you're building, protecting, or transforming through your leadership. Then there's the crew, the people you lead and journey with, your peers, your partners, your team. They depend on you for clarity, direction, and care. And you depend on them to carry the mission forward. Leadership means resourcing and aligning your crew so that you can move forward together. Below the surface, every organization is influenced by the current. These are the external forces like policy shifts, funding pressures, or community needs that shape your course whether you like it or not. You can't control the current, but you can learn how to navigate it. And what propels the boat forward are two internal forces, care and courage. Care is how you lead with humanity. Courage is how you make hard decisions with integrity. Both are necessary to move through resistance and build something real. Every interview in this series is grounded in one or more parts of the Anchor Way, because we believe leadership is not just about vision. It's about structure, systems, and soul. All right, welcome back, leaders. Today we have Dennis. Dennis and I had the pleasure of being together in an angel syndicate, I don't know, maybe like 4 years ago. It was leaders coming together, Black leaders coming together to pool our money and fund entrepreneurial ideas. And I had the pleasure of getting to know him. And ever since then, I watch him on LinkedIn and all the wonderful things he is doing. And so I am super excited to have him here to talk about care. And Dennis, I'm going to let you tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. First of all, Dr. Tracey Samone, I'm so glad that you would have me here. I've been watching the series and I've been biting at the chip or whatever they call it or whatever. I've been waiting my turn to be able to be in your presence and share space with you. So thank you for having me. So Dennis Maurice Dumpson, I am professionally, I am a nonprofit executive that I've been working with working in nonprofit as executive for about the last 22 years, particularly focusing on strategic communications, marketing, and fundraising. And then in between that time, I've been kind of like vacillating between racial equity work, one through a business that I started called Invest Black, which is a racial equity company that focuses on vitiating anti-Blackness and the policies, practice, and narrative and structures of nonprofits, small business, and government agencies. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years since the end of 2019. And that's a huge part of my work where we now focus on really co-creating a vision that we think is most equitable and humane for folks. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm very proud of that. I love my hometown. I am a son to my mother, who is a brilliant leader as well. And we are also finalizing a book called Radical Sensitivity, which will release later this year. And I'm also the author of two other books. One is called What My Colored Eyes See, which is a book of poetry and short stories. And then a book I released in 21 or 22 called Blackwash. And so much more to share, I'm sure, like about me in some way, but that feels like the baseline of things. And I'm sure some of this will come out when I start telling the story of care, when we start talking a little bit more.
I love that. Dennis, your life is so full. You have your hands in so many things that you are loving on and caring for.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, can you tell me a little bit about how care actually is showing up for you in your leadership in your life? Like what it means to you?
It's central because, well, first of all, my care stems from a love of Black people. And because of that, the way that I approach the projects that I take on, the organizations that I decide to align with, the work that I decide to do is always going to have some stream of it is going to flow through the experience that Black people are having, whether that's through education, whether that's through economic justice work, whether it's through community engagement or any of the other things that I have, done throughout my career. That's a central force of it. Because I'm so hyper focused on providing space particularly for Black leaders to be able to thrive in a very fulfilling way, and for Black people, not even just leaders, just Black people at large to thrive in the best ways possible. Care exudes from that, because from my perspective, Black life exists in an idea of care. You know what I mean? Some of my first teachers, I always like to say, my education is not from any pedigree, you know what I mean? And degrees I have and all the other things like everybody else. But my first teachers were my community, my church, which was a Black church, a Black neighborhood, a Black family that gave me things that I still live with today. And that was what instills the care. So what role does it play? It's the centerpiece of what I do, because there's no way that I can be a pro-Black leader and not also be able to examine myself for care. And that care shows up as making sure that I am not oppressing others in the ways in which I interact, to make sure that even as a Black man, that my misogyny doesn't show up in a way that is harmful to women, Black women in particular, and from my ethos in any particular way. And also ensuring that like my heart and my heart doesn't interrupt the ways in which I can produce harm without knowing. And what I mean in that is that sometimes people say, my intention wasn't to do these things, but sometimes we do things because we're so ingrained inside of stuff. So a no harm policy or whatever ensures that even when I think I'm using the best parts of my heart, if I find out at any point that it's not and that it's offensive, to be able to give myself the ability to not have so much ego that I can't regress and say, wait a minute, I actually have to go back and think about this a little bit differently. So I think care is central to the way that I think of things.
So when you're holding like this no harm policy and care in your heart, what are some of the questions that you ask yourself when you find that you have maybe harmed somebody? Like, what are the questions that in the conversation you have with yourself so that you are able to actually walk back and have those healing conversations?
Yeah.
Or even to identify that you caused harm.
Yeah. I mean, I think a part of it too is being inside of what's happening, not outside of what's happening. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, especially as leaders, we're like, what do people need? As if we also don't need. And that's also something that happens inside of conversation. As a racial equity leader and a scholar of race too, sometimes what happens is like you'll see somebody that says, I'm an ally and I just want to know what I can do to help you all. I want to know what I can do to be able to do this, whether that's around gender, whether that's around race, whether it's around any of these things. It's kind of like, you are also implicated in this. You inside of it. So I think when you see yourself in it and not outside of it, like I am not, even as a leader, I am not, a czar or some type of like Svengali, that's like pulling strings and doing whatever. I am a part of the same things that happen. So if the culture is horrible, I'm feeling it if I'm in it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like if I'm purposely putting myself outside of it, I'm not going to feel it. So I think
Mm-hmm.
even for your point about having awareness to it, you have to be inside of it. You can't be outside of it. And that's something that I've learned also from like organizing and movement culture. If you ever see when people start movements, there may be a figurehead, there may be a vocal person, you know what I mean, that you see, but they have to be in it. A lot of times they have personal stories that reflect it. They're constantly adjusting themselves around what's happening. They're learning new things in between it. So being in the midst of it is really important, not just living outside of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. You have to be in it, not outside of it. Have you ever found yourself outside of it? Like, I go ahead. Your
No,
face said
no,
you.
no, 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 no. Go ahead, finish your question. But yeah,
I want to know about that reaction.
sure. No, I'm human. I don't get it all right. You know what I mean? Like I don't get it all right at all. Like I have harmed people with the ways that I've acted. I've harmed people with my decision making power. I've harmed people with my use of power.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not intentionally. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I want to believe at least. You know what I mean? Like that's not what's happening. That's not my heart. But the reality is that it happens. You know what I mean? We are constantly making decisions, especially as leaders. And you, as a Black leader as well, I know you know, and somebody who is coaching and leading people who are leading, you know what I mean? There's so much you have to grapple with. Like a part of it is how you show up. The other part of it is that how you allow other people to show up and how people see you in the role and how this and that. So it's always sometimes so layered that sometimes you miss a piece because you're thinking about one. I'm never thinking about one thing when I think about my leadership or the ways that, and people can be impacted in that, whether it's slights of narrative, like how we share things. You know what I mean? Like how information is done. Small example is we were doing a outreach of things or whatever in my office in my organization about big changes that were happening, and I was referencing something because I lead revenue, so I was referencing something that said, something happened with revenue is because we didn't do this and we did that and blah blah blah. So everybody was like, oh, okay, I get that. That's great or whatever. And I felt like I was taking the brunt of it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm over revenue. This thing didn't happen, et cetera, et cetera. And my team, my fundraising team said, hey, that kind of made me feel away because it made me feel like I didn't do something and
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there. So just as a small instance, it's one of those things where it's like, even when we're not intended, I thought I was taking it on. I thought I was doing the things or whatever like that. My intention wasn't to make them feel bad, but it's just about seeing it. And now when I think about these things, it increases the way that I do. So if you keep on living, you want to make those mistakes. You want to have those errors and you want to be good to yourself in the process. And
Mm-hmm.
to get to yourself, you have to be able to kind of take the ego out because ego is the killer. You know what I mean? Ego will set you up to fail every time because you'll never be able to grow. So, and I'm not saying being egoless. We all have some form of ego that we're navigating through, but recognize that it exists. And then you're able to kind of make the changes that are necessary. But I have constantly, I get it wrong. I get it right. I try my best. I try again. You know what I mean? But I'm always trying to make sure that I'm living in an existence where harm is not something that I'm producing.
Mm-hmm. And I love this. You're gonna get it wrong. Like I used to always say when I taught kids, and it's a different subject, but like they would get an answer wrong and feel really bad about it. I'm like, you learn more from when you make the mistake than when you're perfect. Like this is how you know what type of work needs to be done. And I love
Yeah.
that you say you have to care for yourself. Like there is like a need for self-compassion because you're gonna make mistakes. How do you care for yourself? What does self-compassion look like for you?
I think one of the things, so like in a practical way, in the midst of leading and kind of doing work, is that you have to make sure that you are appropriately delegating like work across your teams, right? Or whatever that may look like, or across an org, whatever that may be. And also acknowledging for yourself and those people that are working alongside of you about what your pressure points are. Because I think what happens is oftentimes when we're delegating in the midst of work, we're kind of, and when I say delegating, I don't just mean like tangible, do this project, I'll do this, I'll do that. I mean like delegating like the heft of having to think. Some things is not a tactical thing. It's just kind of like, we have this partner we just have to manage. Can you just make sure that I get a brief or an update, or can you review these types of things or whatever the case is not? But also be clear about like where your bandwidth is with others, not just with yourself. Because I think one of the things around care is that we feel like we can own it independently, and that
Mhm.
actually sometimes is the most harmful thing. You know what I mean? Because we build up a history, and I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks. Sometimes history is more harmful than actual harm. You know what I mean? We build up a history where we start to say, like, I don't have to, tell anybody this, and I can handle this on my own, and I'll take this thing on, and I'll take this thing on. Instead, just say, look, here's where I'm really good at. I feel really strong at being able to do this. I'm going to need some support on these areas or whatever that we have over here. And this is going to help us all shine, but it's really going to help me be able to show up as my best self. Is this something that we could fit in, et cetera? So I think in a practical way, I want to show up like that. Outside of like work and just in my own general life, I think it's really about being able to like separate yourself from it. I am just learning over the last 3 years how to have a conversation where I don't start off with who I am professionally. You know what I'm saying? Like what have I done? What are the accolades or something like, who are you? And like asking those deep questions really kind of puts you in a place to have to think about something different. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's not about, did I go to a spa? Did I get this and that? Sometimes the self-care is recognizing that you have other parts of you to care for. You know what I'm saying? It's not just about the image and the veneer that we've built up. Sometimes it's about like the internal stuff. Like when I go home and I'm like around my family and it's, Thanksgiving, or I'm like helping my mom fry fish, during the summer or something like that, or whatever the case is, I want to be able to refer to those things as vibrant parts of my life, not just ancillary things that just happen to happen on weekends when I have the time. And when I start thinking about what that is, that actually gives me the space to kind of separate myself from some of the ongoing, you know what I mean, issue of trying to figure out like who I am professionally or anything else too.
What part of you needs the most care right now?
Right now, so this or whatever, but I'll share as well or whatever like that. My father passed away a week and a half ago. And this week that we're in right now, his funeral was just Tuesday. This is a Friday that we're doing this. And I think right now I am in the midst of a transition. And I'm going to share something, I guess, a little personal or whatever, just to be able to add context to why I'm sharing this note. My father and I had a relationship that was filled with love, but also was that consisted of boundaries. You know what I mean? And because of that, there's a way that you have to acknowledge people that isn't just about your relationship with them, it's their relationship to themselves. And a few years ago, I kind of had this revelation that my parents were human, right? And I'm getting to the answer. This is my long-winded, but I'm getting to the answer to answer your question, what part of me? I had to recognize that my parents were human. And because of that, I now am able to see my mother and my father as like human beings, you know what I mean, that have independent lives that actually exist outside of me. I was, approaching 40, and I was like, wow, okay, this is new. I didn't know y'all was humans. You know what I mean? Like, and that actually brought something out of me to be able to see something different. Because of that, there is a mourning that happens to be able to say like, oh man, I thought you were the main people to do this. I thought this was your only job. You know what I mean? I thought this was the only thing that you had to care about, and it wasn't. And I mention all that to say that after a passing of a parent, with a complex relationship that is definitely filled with love, but also has like history, attached to it or whatever, I am recognizing that my ability to not just be logical about what's happening, but also be heartfelt about what's happening is actually the part that I need to really like be able to think through. Because as an intellectual, just like you, it is easy to be able to think through like, this is that. What I'm feeling right now is this, and I am opening myself up to the blah blah blah. And you're litigating your wellness for yourself or whatever, with yourself or whatever. And I recognize that some of it is just hearty feelings. You know what I'm saying? Like hearty. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a heart-filled feelings. And I prayed. I was going to the hospital. He was not doing well, but I was going to the hospital. And I said, you know what? God, just give me clarity. Just give me clarity of my mind, but also clarity of my heart. So at this point, the care and the thing that like I need the most support on is just making sure that my heart is in it, and not my heart that is attached to my brain, but my heart that stands alone. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? My heart just sits on its own. It has to be able to handle the feelings of things, regardless of whether or not they're logical, illogical,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not they make sense or they don't make sense. I have to be able to hold my heart, you know what I mean, well. And I think that that's something that, even in my 40s, I'm still learning how to, you know what I mean, figure it out.
Yeah, that resonates with me because when you are intellectual, you can be real heady about everything. And I've
Mhm.
learned like I intellectualize and I philosophize and I sound real good talking about these feelings, but I ain't so good at feeling these feelings.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then when
Yeah.
you have to do the work of feeling, it's like, whoa, I'm actually in my body. And so I heard you say like holding your heart. If you could create any container to hold your heart right now, this season of your life, what would it be?
The container. Wow. You know what? I would want it to be contained in something equally as fragile.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like have it contained in something like glass, just as a feeling of it. And the reason why I say that is because the protector of myself inside of me says, I want a brick wall around this thing so I can just protect and do the things. But I don't want it to escape harm. I don't want it to escape feeling things. I just want it to be something that I can pick up. But I want to know, I don't want to lose the fact that it is fragile. I don't want to not recognize that I am fragile. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like, and I don't want to recognize that others are fragile. And when I know that I am, I can recognize that in other people and I can treat people humanely. So I want it to be wrapped in something that's just as fragile as my heart is or whatever. And when I say that, it's not about, the integrity of the work and blah, 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 and all the other stuff. It really is about me humanely. Like there are points where I just know that it's just like I'm on the end of a string. I'm trying, I'm
Mhm.
trying my best to make it from here to there or whatever, like that I'm moving. And I don't want to lose understanding that because I feel like as I grow in leadership, there are more voices that are validating that me having a heart that softens and hardens, as the feelings come in is not professional. It's not aligned. And I just want to always be able to know that whatever state it is fragile, it's fluctuating, and it is okay. You know what I mean? So that would be the container that I would want to be able to have. And that's such a good question, Dr. Tracy. Yeah, now put that on my therapy list. Did I say that right? You know what I mean? Like,
I love it. I love that. Because also, not only is glass fragile, it reminds you how delicate it is, but it's also see through. So you can always, like,
hmm
you have an increased awareness. It's not hidden behind something, it's right there in public view. Like, this is my heart and it matters.
Yeah. No, it's so, so true. Yeah.
So let's switch gears just a little bit, talk a little bit about legacy.
hmm
What if nothing is holding you back? No limits. Sky's the limit, not even the sky, the universe.
hmm
What would your next chapter of leadership look and feel like for you?
hmm So I know this answer very intimately because I'm in the midst of it. If I'm being really honest, I'm in the midst of thinking about a new foundation. Is it okay for me to share a little bit of a story and then kind of
Yes,
go?
share whatever. This is real talk. Whatever you got,
Yeah.
bring it to us.
So, I'm completing a doctorate, and one of the things that was my research is around the mental health of leaders of color, but specifically, I'm thinking about Black leaders in the nonprofit or education space, still to be determined, but somewhere in that vein. And that happened because I was a board chair for a reproductive justice org, and I was an incoming board president for a large education organization. And both of the CEOs of those organizations had crisis, right? One that ended in a death by suicide of one of the CEOs while I was on the board. And after that happened and we kind of left out of the space of like grief, which was this quick, you know what I mean? As an organization, as a leadership team, we started going into like narratives like nobody could have ever said that this would happen. Nobody could have ever picked this up. Nobody would have ever known. This came out of nowhere. How do we not know this? And on the opposite side, it's like, how do we not see this going on? And that's, what I mean? Like everything is about this acknowledgement that this has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with them. And we could not have any line of sight to it. And for some reason, that has always felt insufficient to me. You know what I mean? And as a leader in the midst of it, that was a part of that. Again, causing harm, whether intending or not to, or whatever. You know what I mean? I felt like that was not insufficient even for my own self. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't want to get out of it. I wanted to be able to live in like, what is this? You know? And to that end, I think that I am really thoughtful about this next generation of leaders because the world is getting funny. It's getting tricky, and I think it's trickier than it has been in the past,
Mm-hmm.
in the more recent past, I'll say. And because of that, we need to make sure that we're focused. So much talk about AI and like this powerful technology and like the future of this and the future of that. And sometimes I think we are losing so much of our humanity, like that we don't have the opportunity to see people. Even when I see like on social media and the way that people kind of engage, it just is odd to me. You know what I mean? So my future definitely will surround something around the mental health of leaders and being able to think about what our protection looks like, and what our advocacy looks like. I'm in the midst of creating a platform called ALUK, ALUK, but the name is Act Like You Know. And what it is I want to aggregate the data that we're using generally for like compliance and punitive measures. Like, how many keystrokes did you make? When did you clock in and when did you clock out? Did you steal time? Did you do this? Did you do that? Well, if we get all this data and you see somebody that they worked overtime and they're up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you see they're back at their computer and you're back into the computer, you see that they logging in at 2:30 in the morning and you see all these things. Why are they doing it? And like, what do we do not to be able to say that's out of compliance, but what do we do to say what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
How do we call people in? And
Mm-hmm.
how do we call people into an existence where we say, like, man, this might tell us something about our own culture. This may tell us something about our own organizations. It may tell us something about where we stand at, in a smaller micro system or larger systems too. And I just want to be a part of that conversation. In a very like real, true way. So I think my legacy will definitely have something to do with that. I've never been content with my legacy being around how much money I have raised as a fundraiser or anything else. And I don't want that to be the thing that I'm remembered for. I want it to be something that's a little bit more evolved. And this is a tether to work that I did in 2011. I self-produced a documentary about the mental health of of a Black woman, one subject documentary called Journey to Raha. And when I did that, which is on YouTube, you can see it or whatever, any things like that. But when I did that, the goal was to be able to talk about like what happens when and she was a preschool teacher. She used to love dancing. She got fired from a job and then or left the job. I don't remember what the context was actually, but she left the job or whatever and like had to figure out her love for dance and her love for herself in the process. And that storytelling for me was also important. So I also want to tell a new story. Like I'm oftentimes telling stories that advocate to donors, that advocate to funders, that advocates to the broader public about how we tell an organizational story. But there are so many individualized stories about our work and ourselves that I just want to be a part of and I want to lead in. You know what I mean? So I want those to be signature to that. So when I think about legacy, one is around the health of the people, the health of my people. The health of leaders of color is incredibly important. And also like positioning us to not be able to have a way out of accountability. You know what I mean? Like I want us to act like we know. You know what I mean? Like I want us to act like we see what we see. I want us to be able to advocate with data. I want us to be able to lead with thoughtfulness, and not have to be in a position where we're constantly thinking of ourselves um, as the oppressed, but also like equally as engaged in figuring our way through these things or whatever together in the ways that we have the most bandwidth and capacity to be able to do. So that's something that would be incredibly important for my legacy building and this next generation of my life.
Mm-hmm. I hear a through line. Even when you started, you talked about being in something versus being out of something. And
Mm-hmm.
then it sounds like, with the tragic occurrence with the CEO, you put yourself in it and begin to
Mm-hmm.
think about act like putting yourself in it, and even like this glass around your heart that you can see through. It's almost like you're looking at the glass around other people's hearts, and you're wanting to climb into the glass and care for the heart in the glass. And I love that. I love that through line that's emerging.
I
So last
appreciate.
question. When it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to say about you?
Um, this feels so poignant. I'm like, say the right thing. What do I want people to say?
Just look into the glass of your
I
heart.
know exactly. Like that's what I'm
Say
saying.
what
I
you
don't.
see.
I think I just want, to a great extent. I don't want to be. I can admit that there is brilliance living in me, but I would rather be known than being a brilliant thought leader or a brilliant leader in this way or somebody who contributed these amazing things. I'd rather be known as somebody who put their all into the growing evolution of these things that we do together. Because I think singularly, I don't necessarily know if I would be as gratified knowing who I am. I don't know if I'd be as gratified knowing that I did these things, me singularly did this. I
Hmm.
would to know that I was a part of a bigger community and a bigger machine, so to speak, or whatever, that was driving some of the big change that we have. I also want to be known as somebody who, has a legacy that was not afraid to say the thing. You know what I mean? Like I have grown to a point to where, I am, passionate about, the things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about Black folks and I want to be able to say that out loud. And I don't want to have to feel, I don't care what the DEI conversation or the et cetera conversation is. I want to be able to say those things like loudly and be in love with the things that I love, publicly. And I think that I want to know that that's something that I did. You know what I mean? Not something that I deigned to do or wanted to do. That's something that I did, and I want that to be seen in my legacy. If I had to think about anything else, it would be the care of our heart and our mind, in all the times, but especially in this moment. You know what I mean? I say this moment because it's evil is durable. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, but like I think as we go through these things, I'm more concerned. Folk is going to do what they do. You know what I mean? Like they're going to move how they move or whatever, And I think to a great extent, I can't control that to a great extent. What we can control is how we treat each other, how we care about each other, how we are, advocating for our rights in the midst of some of these like incredibly, um, you know, morally eroded times, you know what I mean, that we're in. And I'm concerned for Black folks. I'm concerned for all people, but specific to what I'm thinking of, I'm concerned for Black folks in this moment. I'm concerned for Black leaders. I'm concerned for myself. You know what I mean? And I want us to be able to have a new way. Um, as the church would say, you know what I mean? I want us to sing a new song. You know what I mean? So I want to be a part of that and I want to be able to do that. And if that can happen, that's the legacy that I want. I want that to be at the top. You know what I mean? I want that to be the cream that rises. So
Mhm. I think that is happening. I think that you are doing it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, Dennis. We are grateful. We are
Thank
honored
you. I
and
appreciate you.
grateful. Thank you,
Listen, I'm
ladies, for
grateful.
joining us for another Friday, and we will see you next week. Bye. Thank you for joining us for Real Talk with Real Leaders, Inspiration for Radical Freedom Dreamers. This space is here to remind you that your story, your vision, and your leadership are part of reimagining what's possible. If you're a leader ready to share your voice, scan the QR code on the screen to apply to be featured. Together, we're fueling radical freedom dreamers, leaders daring to chart new courses for our communities and our world. Until next time, keep anchoring, keep leading, and keep dreaming.